This is 𝗕cie𝗿𝘀𝘁, podcasts for the people.
Hey, good afternoon, John. I say good afternoon. I don't know where you're at. So welcome to the Born or Made podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. And we're just on the cusp of noon here in New Orleans.
Okay, that's right. I knew you were in New Orleans. That's always the first thing I ask, like, where am I talking to you from? So you're in the great state of Louisiana.
That's right.
So are you a native from Louisiana, boy, or where are you from?
No, I've been here about 14 years. I'm from Kansas City, and I've had stints kind of all over the place in the last 50 years.
Really? So, so you grew up in Kansas City. So kind of walk me through your first childhood. So you're born in Kansas City area?
Born in Kansas City in the, suburb of Kansas City, pretty normal Midwesterner with a big Catholic family. Dad played for the Broncos. Mom had a big Irish family. So there was a lot of people around and a lot of chaos and, just kind of a wild outdoorsman of sorts in the suburbs playing football and doing my thing. Pretty wild child.
Yeah, that's fun growing up like that. I think it's, and this is not what I never really write anything down, just so you know. So yeah, growing up as a kid, it's funny you talk about that. Like, I mean, I was at my grandparents' house every weekend. Like we were running around chasing each other and throwing rocks at each other, climbing trees and, chaos, but in a fun way, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that I look at it in a lot of different ways now. I probably don't have enough of it right now with my kids, enough people coming in and out of the doors. But like we just celebrated my mom's 80th birthday and we were kind of reminiscing. There was a lot of people in and out, a lot of fun. I was outside most of the time playing in the creek or riding bikes or skinning my knees or whatnot. So a lot of freedom back then as a child when I wasn't in school, not a lot of freedom in school.
Well, congratulations. Your mom's still alive at 80. That's a great number. Yeah. My dad just turned 80. He'll be 81 this year. So, it's great to have him around that long. What a wealth of information they have.
Yes.
So you grew up in the Midwest and then, obviously you were very involved in sports, but, it kind of jumped forward. Then all of a sudden you're an artist now. And so when did you find that out at an early age? Were you just kind of penciling around and doing stuff, or was that later, or how'd that work out?
Yeah. Well, it's only recent where I've realized that I didn't have the same life as a lot of other people. And I like to look at the similarities, not the differences. But in this case, I'll tell you, I looked at everything a lot different. I still do. I think that's it. The eyes are a part of your brain. A lot of people talk about recently, and like my visual scope on things still to this day, very different than others. The way I look at the grain in wood, the way I stop and look at an airport and kind of feel a surface. I'm always looking. As a child at 4 years old, I was looking at marble and finding the patterns in it and wondering how in the hell they did that. How they smoothed the rock. I would look at bricks and wonder how the hell they got the stamp in them. I mean, I looked at everything that was surface stuff, including artwork, sculpture, everything. I just stared at it to try to figure it out. I still go to a museum and do that. So I think that started something that was very different. And I would say that's ingrained in me that I remember when I was 2 years old and 4 years old, looking at that, being fascinated by stuff. And a lot of people have that tunnel vision. They just don't look around the whole room when they walk into it. But I do. I still to this day check everything out. I think that's where it started for me.
That is so interesting. So musicians are unusual people, right? It's not, I don't mean that in a negative way. Just like, I'm talking to this guy years ago. He's like, yeah, for me, when I go to a concert, I struggle. Now he took it in a different way. He says, because when you hear an orchestra and they are amazing, right? Like, I'm always like, oh my gosh. He's like, yeah, when the one guy it's a C and he's off slightly, I'm like, he cringes. I'm like, you can hear that? And he goes, yes. because he could hear the perfect pitch. So you're really applying that same thing, but in a visual standpoint, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I think in natural, and then there's in two parts in this. In the natural setting, when I look at an aspen tree and see all the leaves in harmony, that for me actually puts me in some kind of harmony. And when I'm looking at man-made stuff, I actually see the disharmonious ways of the potholes or the things that are man-made, and that would probably relate to that guy. So the guy that you were just talking about, knowing when something's off. But for many years, I actually loved things that were off. I lived in Crested Butte. The town was very crooked, and the houses were offset because of the withered old mining town. I loved an old rusted truck from the 60s that was beat up. I learned to live in a world where the mistakes, I celebrated the mistakes, because that was the humanness of being, different. So New Orleans, a perfect place for that. We got pink houses and blue houses and broken porches. And so I would celebrate that. And then I think I've come out of that in a sense where I've looked for lately kind of not necessarily perfection, but I took a trip to Rome not too long ago. I painted at the Vatican, and I became enthralled with the unbelievable craftsmanship, for lack of a better term, and artistry of the way Michelangelo and some of these artists finished pieces and some of the details of architecture. So I kind of fell out of love with the imperfectionism of folk art and in love with the perfectionism of, beautiful art. And then I just kind of go back and forth with that.
Wow.
And that might even go into an automobile, in the way, someone at Ferrari or somebody at Porsche might build that. I expand that. And then, the power of so many people that put up a skyscraper in New York, 70 stories in 70 days. I've watched a skyscraper go up in these prefab world, and it's fascinating. So, I kind of love everything that's created, and I'm a seeker with that.
Did you, so you go through high school, you get into, you're playing all these sports, but are you seeing, and this is going to apply to your life? Is this just kind of your normal? And so therefore you don't think anything different about it?
No, which is interesting. So thought I was born to play football, and in a lot of ways I was. It was everything. My brother's still a diehard football fan. I played football at the University of Kansas. In high school, I was really good at football and art. And that's it. Nothing else. Maybe decent at socializing and drinking beer on the weekend. But other than that, I just was a lost cause in class. And the teachers would ask me, are you getting this? And I'd be very good socially. I'd be, I'm totally getting it. When I was totally lying. So I knew how to tuck my shirt in and follow the rules, but I was lost in everything. And when it came to academia, I'm dyslexic, ADHD, and an artist. So none of the core classes of mathematics or geometry or any of that worked for me. So kind of to, answer your question, I get an art scholarship and a football scholarship to college, and I didn't even know I was really good enough to do that. I was told I was so dumb. I was called a box of rocks, and you weren't dyslexic or ADD. You were dumb.
Right.
You were dumb as fuck. You're dumb shit. Yeah. So I kind of I ingrained that shame early on, and so I just took for granted the art, and so did people. Man, they would be look at you and they'd go, "Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's so nice. You draw pictures." They didn't take it serious. My art teacher said, "You're never going to make it in the art world, painting football players and musicians. That's not real art." Well, either I'm a total antagonistic person who wanted to prove her wrong. But I mean, I'm out in the middle of a concert painting the Rolling Stones, and I'm also at the Super Bowl. So she clearly was wrong about that, because that became my life, right? Painting musicians and professional athletes of all sorts. So I back to college, because I'm jumping all over the place.
That's okay.
Those were two different archetypes, and that is clear in hindsight. This athlete in college who was a jock, who was pretty, confident and worked his ass off, and then this artist who was kind of a recluse and shy and was, had a beating heart, and maybe we call him a romantic. Those two didn't really live in the same realm. I was also kind of a turd in a punch bowl when I walked into art class. So now you just picture this guy with a shaved head who's 6'4", 265, wearing football sweats, chewing tobacco, and is kind of late for class because he's entitled, because they treat football players great. I walk in, now all these other kids are wearing black trench coats with black painted fingernails. They found their tribe, right? They've now found their tribe of people they've been waiting for all their life. And I walk in, I'm like, who are these weirdos? And they're saying the same thing to me, right? And but we get along, right? Because ultimately we're in total silence for 3 hours, painting the same plant, or even more focus, some naked 38-year-old mother of 4 who's sitting there standing still for 3 hours while we have to paint him, which is incredibly intense to focus on. And painting or drawing the human body is one of the most incredibly difficult things to do. It really is.
Yeah, because if you go back, there's not a lot of good ones. Like when you see those, occasionally, like even when you go to like the famous museums, I remember going to the White House and they have some of the greatest art in the world, right? And most of them are good, but when you see them, you're like, that's good, but it doesn't look like them. And that's interesting. I would have never thought that, but now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. So artist, football player, like you don't get much into the spectrums. Like when you said that about going to their trench coats and painting fingernails, and you come in with a big jock. I mean, that is just comical. And this would have been 70s, 80s?
Early 90s.
90s,
no,
okay.
Early 90s.
Okay, you're a youngster. Yeah, so wow.
Nirvana was big.
Yeah, okay.
There was a huge movement of like grunge.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
It was great. It was a great time period for music and a great time period for culture, in my opinion.
That is so wild. Like, so you're going through college, obviously, you're dyslexic, which I interviewed.
Didn't even know it.
How old were you when you found out?
8 years ago. I talked to this dyslexic teacher, and she goes, I said, I took this quick dyslexic test on Facebook, and I think I'm dyslexic. She goes, well, listen to this book, and then you'll know. She was a person that was really into it. She taught students how to overcome dyslexia. And I was like, yep. Here's the good news, though. I have had a life coach as an ADD, specialized in ADD. So most of the systems that I have already created have gone around that, meaning I have huge whiteboards in my room. I have sticky notes everywhere. I have custom created systems through calendars, people, places, and things that are, my own, so that I remember them. And that I was already overcoming the dyslexia that way. So I already listened to, iPhone comes out, and all sorts of great things that happened. I was able to share my work in real time because they had a photograph on a phone, which before I just couldn't share my artwork. I had to upload a digital photo onto my website weeks later. But what I got with the audio book was, in my 20s, I think I read one book, Into the Wild. And then I think in my 30s and 40s, I've read somewhere around 300 or 400, and podcasts. And I was able to get the stuff that I couldn't do. I couldn't read without jumping all over the page with my eyes. It just wasn't the way I looked at things. So a lot of technology has made it easier for me to adapt to my skill. This is my gift. This is my this is the greatest thing that could ever happen to me, is my anxieties and my alcoholism and my hyperactivity and my huge empathetic heart, and that also drives me absolutely insane sometimes, when I feel too much. So all these are a gift, and they came with this body and mind, and I have to navigate them with the tools that I learn, that come to me or that I choose to take on.
Wow. So just only reason why I'm asking about the dyslexia. So I interviewed this gentleman a couple of months ago. He didn't know he was dyslexic until he was 25 years old. He was in an airport and he saw a book and it triggered him. He had never read a book. And it's very similar to you in the fact that dyslexia is like one of his greatest assets now. And he is actually artistic, and he knows more about the human brain than literally any person I've ever spoken to, because he embraced it. And so he's in his early 60s. So this obviously was a long time ago, before they even had as much information. So I just think it's interesting. So I commend you for that. I thought that's just really neat. And everything you just said about all your things, you've taken and used to your advantage over time. And that's really cool.
Yeah, I think my dad taught me that early. He talked about Lincoln and adversity and all the stuff that happened and how it's your greatest gift. I must have bought into it, because when I really get into gratitude or calm the nervous system down, then I'm so lucky to have all the things that I have, because when you look at your past as your wisdom, and when you look at all your, let's say, shortcomings or your, character defects, when you look at them as a superpower, then you find yourself then you've begun to find that these are all your greatest assets. I couldn't drink anymore because it was killing me, but the ability to have that much energy, that with a group of friends, and have that many laughs and have that many good times in a small 8-hour, 6-hour period, was also a gift for me that I know I can tap into anytime I want, whether it be a NFL game or a concert or a road trip, or we were just on the river. I have to bring that, that energy, without the lubrication of, vodka Red Bull, so to speak.
Oh, that's a good combo.
Not so much.
Yeah, I know. That's like, woo, okay. That's legit. So,
I used to have 5 or 6 of those. So I was probably, amped up like, a goddamn 84 station wagon with somebody just like pushing on the gas as far as you could possibly push it. So didn't realize that Tuesday, when I was exhausted, worn out, wiped out, that had anything to do with the Saturday before, where I was, out for 16 hours. It was like no connection. So balance is a hard thing to do, but I'm always trying to keep it at a high level. And now I use breath work, cold water, meditation, walks in the park, sometimes I use this like high vibrational music to clear my head. I've got a super tool belt. Matter of fact, I used to have a tool belt. Now I have a tool room where I can grab anything at any time and, moderate my nervous system. I just did some breath work because I wasn't feeling excited enough for this podcast. So, it was almost kind of like pumping up the inner tube to get to be respectful of you and bring my best, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's service, right? How can we be of service so that we can pass along what we've learned and give it to others? That's ultimately the number one thing that most of these religions and most of these, teachings talk about. And so, obviously we are going to tap a nerve with someone today, or while we're doing this, that something's going to speak to somebody, whether it be breath work, meditation, or going to take that art class that they were thinking about taking, starting that podcast, and then we can be the lubricant or the aha moment that gets them to have the courage to do it. Because we are here to evolve, we are here to be of service, and we are here to be our best selves. And we're just figuring it out every day. And there's no end, and there's no finish line. There's no graduation to learning. It's just one day at a time. And, sometimes you grow too fast. Sometimes sometimes you got to sit around and rest a while and sleep in. And it's just this constant driving,
Are you a real hard self-critic of yourself?
So that's probably the main thing that I'm working on now, is that shame. Brené Brown talks about the difference between shame and guilt. You feel guilty if you fuck up and you lie, and you feel guilty about things that you do wrong, because we're not perfect. But the shame spiral, and the shame is a big thing with addicts, and it's a big thing with a lot of people, is they think they are that mistake. And even if they did, they were an addict or an alcoholic for 10 years, they have a hard time going back into that, I am that, meaning I am a piece of shit, or I am, even hurt my body to say dumb as a box of rocks. I haven't said that in years, but that isn't true. So my body's going, what the hell are we talking about here? That isn't true. So I got to be very mindful of the self-care through the self-talk. And one of the best tools that I've had is, I would never, ever talk to anyone the way I was talking to myself. Ever. I wouldn't talk to my kids. I wouldn't talk to a police officer. I wouldn't talk to anybody the way I was talking to myself. I was putting myself down so much. I would, spill blueberries out of the refrigerator, and in my head, I was screaming, "You piece of shit." You know what I mean? And what a dumbass son of a bitch. And that is what I picked up, I would say, from my dad, who was a running back at the Broncos, and he was tougher than a $2 steak, and he was everything I wanted to be, but he was extremely hard on himself when it came to that, what's the word? That impulsive behavior towards himself, watching him play basketball. Watching the Tom Brady or Mahomes, they get over it. They don't beat themselves up. They don't. And that mentality, I thought, was making me a better football player. It wasn't. And it isn't making you a better human. You gotta, get over it and move on, because you start getting in that loop of shame. Then you are the mistake. And the next play, you're focused on the mistake. You make another mistake. So it's finding that flow is huge for me.
Yeah. You talk about that in sports, but yet you really got to apply it to life. That, it's funny. You brought that up. I am my worst self-critic. I've never heard anybody say about, if I talk to other people the way I talk to myself. Well, I do that all the time. I've been working on it now for years, and I've never heard anybody use that analogy. And if we started applying that, because I'll do stuff and I'm and mine is always you're such an idiot. That's what comes on in my brain. And I have my oldest son. He's like, "Dad, you can't do that." He tells me that all the time now. And I'm starting to finally, I mean, I'm 61 years old. I'm just starting to finally apply that. And, you know, good for you. And maybe this will affect some people. You got to stop doing that crap. Like, you're terrible to yourself.
It's terrible.
And I'm better now.
Yeah. I mean, it even started 5 years ago. I was like, don't beat yourself up. And all the body hears is beat yourself up. Like, you don't hear the positive. And I know that a lot of people, you know, like I've gotten bits and pieces from Tony Robbins and all sorts of coaches where I built my own construct. But the one thing that it is that I have heard the best is it's like, be extremely kind to yourself. Be extreme, like really use the positive, you know, it's like wake up peacefully, not like don't sleep in, motherfucker.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's me. I mean, I'm up at 5. Yeah, I'm on like 5:30. Yeah, you piece of shit. What are you doing? Sleep? I mean, I'm still trying not to do that now. Like this. Have you ever heard this? Somebody told me this the other day. And first time he goes, Larry, your problem is you focus on the gap, not the gain. And I thought, well, that's pretty simple. I'm always looking at the in between where I'm not connected instead of the positive, right? Instead of the achievement. And so I heard that the other day. So now I'm constantly now, you know, Larry, don't focus on the gap, focus on the gain, you know, and that's your thing. Like you're talking about being hard on yourself. So, and I guess you're still working on that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think more than anything, what I really like to work on is not the lack of or what I have, didn't have, or, you know, what may not be in my future, but trying to be grateful for what I have now. I'm so grateful to be on this podcast. I'm so grateful to go on this trip that I just went on with my children. I'm grateful that I'm alive at 50. I'm grateful that I'm sober, and so on and so on and so on. It's incredibly different than trying to work on stuff that I don't have, you know, because I have everything I've always wanted. This is the life that I wanted in my deepest imagination 14 years ago. It's the same everything. I got this beautiful studio that I wanted. I have 2 beautiful kids. I have this, all these things. I travel the world doing art. I just didn't see it the way that I saw it in my head. But the universe does conspire to, you know, give you what you want. Be careful what you wish for also, because if you want to be a deep thinking artist that feels a lot, you're going to think a lot and feel a lot, and you're going to have to manage that, you know, because empathy and compassion are 2 different things. And the Dalai Lama talks about compassion. I have a lot of compassion for you, and other people, and the person who doesn't, you know, who lives in a blue tarp under the bridge. I have compassion for that person. But if I have too much empathy and I sit there and dwell and share his pain and sit there for 5 or 6 minutes at the stoplight and really empathize with that person too much, I will wipe myself out. I really will. And you got to be careful with that, in my opinion, because there's a lot of pain out there, and there's a lot of, you know, people suffering, and suffering is a part of life, and you got to balance out your own, you know, your own game. I think some people are too worried about other people's pain and not their own, and I think some people are narcissistic and cold as all get out when it comes to understanding, you know, the pain and the suffering that other people have had. I feed these homeless people every once in a while, or I don't know if we call them houseless or whatever. I go to a food shelter, and this one guy who runs it told me about this guy, and I said, "What's up with him?" He said, "You know, his childhood was so rough." He told me about it. Like he psychologically can't seem to get out of it. Right. Really? So, I mean, you know, so telling that guy to go get a job is asinine. That's he is literally incapable. And so, and also I'm not going to go save him, put him in my back seat and and tell him that I'm going to fix him. So this is just a constant, minutia of trying to figure out how to help others and teach them to help themselves, and at the same time take care of your own self-care, so you can take care of your kids and those people around you. So it's just it's a wonderful game, so to speak.
Well, you've done a great job. Thinking about all this we've even talked about today, just spending the time and the effort into yourself to try to get yourself in a good spot. And heck, just the fact hearing you say, like I said, that if you talk to other people the way you talk to yourself,
yeah. I'm
like, wow, okay. Like, that's good for me. Thank you for that. That's just.
Well, I got to cut it out immediately. My advice to you is unsolicited, is cut it out immediately. And what helps me is just to do it out loud.
Okay.
Like, take it easy, or talk to someone you would if they were 8, right? If you talk to an 8-year-old and they were talking to themselves that way, you would be like, hey, go easy on yourself, buddy.
Absolutely, I would. Yeah.
So that's how you need to do it to yourself immediately, not tomorrow. The next time you do something, and look, it probably goes back to childhood trauma. A lot of this stuff goes back to a lot of the way we were talked to, the way we were, told it should be, and the disciplines that were a little ridiculous and abusive. It's like, sometimes I'll put the dishes in wrong and I'll still kind of feel like I'm doing them wrong. I'm like, this is my call. I'm divorced 4.5 years. I can do this any way I want. And so there's still kind of these patterns that we do stuff the right way, quote unquote, that are just somebody else's way. You can do things the way that works for you. Finding your own style is very, very good. I don't know, like, everybody taught me spreadsheets in the 20s when only one coach said, how do you want to do it? Let's start from there. And I said, I like to look at each task. And this is actually the table. I laid out my whole calendar on a table, 1 page at a time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It felt open. And I could look and I'd be like, look, I'm going to India. I'm going here. I'm going there. I want to do this my way. And that has been the way ever since. But spreadsheets works for a lot of people. But today I still look at it and it looks like I'm looking at the NASDAQ. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what any of that means. And so finding your own style is your human right. I don't care if it's brushing your teeth or the way you put your shoes in the closet or the way you the way you design your garage. It is your God-given right to do it your way, that works for your style. Now, if you're married, I get it. If you're, if you have a partner at work, I get it. But that's what's helped me more than anything is my own style. And I love seeing things. There are people that put everything behind counters. They don't want to see anything. My sister doesn't want to see any of the dishes or anything. I want to see everything so I know where it is. And so they're both right.
Yeah. And so you're getting to do that with art. Right. So there's no wrong answer in art, right? You look at the painting behind you and then you go to Rome and look at the paintings of Michelangelo. Right. Doesn't mean either one of them are better or worse. It's just, that's very acceptable. And I guess you could apply that to life, right? That's so, so go back here. Let's go on the one thing. So you get out of college. When did you actually become an artist? When did that happen?
I'll give you some pinnacle moments. I think at 2 and 4.
Yep.
In hindsight, I realized I look at things different. I asked a ton of questions. I'm very inquisitive. Where did you get that? Where did you make that shirt? How did you do that? How did you get this? You sit next to me on a plane at any given time, I'll go deep. That's part of it too. I don't know if I'm a romantic or I want to get under things. There's almost this thing that I want to figure out how it's made. Okay. And then also with the anxiety and the energy that I bring, there had to be an outlet, whether I'm singing in the shower or doodling in the morning. There has to be an outlet for this anxiety, because the anxiety essentially is the gift and it is the energy. So if I'm, a guitar player strumming the guitar, that's not really anxious behavior. But if you take the guitar away, he's gnawing on his nails, right? So
Yep.
give him the guitar. For me, give me the pencil, give me the paintbrush, and I'm going to use that anxiety. But in 2000, it's funny how I do all these different. I usually am just constantly telling stories, one long story when I do these podcasts. But today, for some reason, I'm just kind of going in bits and pieces. But at 26, I was in Chicago making $100,000, wearing a tie every day, working at the Sears Tower, selling long distance, which was a thing back then because people had long distance. And I went to a concert at Red Rocks, which is the most beautiful place in the world. So it's the antithesis of the Sears Tower. It's, T-shirts and shorts rather than a suit and tie and a flat top. And I found creativity. It hit me in the face. I smoked some weed. I hung out with friends. I found unity. I found nature. I found music and harmony. And I went back and I'm an artist. Holy shit. So I hadn't painted in maybe 6 years, maybe 5. And
really?
I came back after that weekend of music, friends, and creativity, and tie-dye shirts and weed. I grew my hair out immediately. By Tuesday, I had a ponytail. No, I'm just kidding. By Tuesday, though, I was painting. And then I went, then everything else was flat. I don't want to ask you what you're getting per minute, through MCI or AT&T. I couldn't do it anymore. So that was my epiphany for sure. Then I've slowly had several different shifts in my life where, right after that epiphany in Colorado, I broke down and cried for 3 hours one night after that. And I just had a hard time accepting that I wasn't, this all-American football player type of guy, and that I had to find my own way. So there's a lot of isolation and independence that was scary. Through another time when I got sober, I lost my dad. I lost my best friend to suicide, who was a big football player at the University of Kansas with me. And I saw my life flash in front of my face, and I said, I'm not going out like this. So I took his life. That was, a lesson where he had a bad moment, and a lot of pressure and a lot of alcoholism. And I said, I'm not going out that way. And I remember the moment that I was done. And then I got sober. And then I went to India and did 100 paintings in 100 days. So I've always been able to work through my grief and stuff in my art. My art saved my life. Also tried to kill me. Being an alcoholic saved my life because I quit. It could have killed me as well. So a lot of the things that saved me then tried to kill me. And I think that may not resonate with everybody, on the, or all these listeners or who, that may not resonate, but what a lot of the stuff, like maybe beating myself up, helped me get to KU as a football player. And then it no longer served me. So that's where you have to go, wait, I'm the luckiest man in the world for marrying this lady and getting 2 kids from her. And then it evolved into something that was unhealthy and it was toxic. And if I didn't learn to detach from that and grow my separate ways and put up boundaries, then it was going to kill me. So that's really hard, right, to figure out. But art has saved my life. I'm very spiritual. I feel like I'm following something that is greater and higher than me. And look, we're always talking about individuality and all that stuff, but the truth is we're one. It's one connective thing. I just drove through the biggest aspen tree organism in the world. all these aspen trees in Colorado, these big white trees, they're all going to turn yellow here in September. Their root system is all interconnected.
That's right. I didn't know that till recently. Yeah, that's right.
I could get a text from a guy in Arizona. He's like, bro, I was just thinking about you. I'm like, literally synchronicities, these cosmic moments that where you pick up the phone and you know it's that person. I mean, all those are happening all the time. We all have, even the most hardest critics who say, oh, I don't believe in any of that. They're like, but I did have a dream when my dad died. It's like, oh, well, you did get a moment of that. Oh, yeah, that was no doubt about it. Okay, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That happens to a lot of people a lot of the time because they're tapped into that frequency. I don't know what it is. I can't prove it. I can just tell you that my experience with the afterlife or my experience with, I don't care if it's two hawks that came to me the other day. That was my experience. You could prove it wrong all you want. My experience with spirituality or something higher than us that gives me this moment of unity as one is not to be fucked with. You cannot fuck with my experience. So who am I to say that I can mess with someone else's? Right? With their experience with whether it be Jesus or my friend who's a Muslim, how can I mess with their own real experience? I can't. And that's what's kept me with good boundaries. And it also makes me feel like I'm just the same as everyone else in a humble moment. We're just a dash, really, from the year we're born and the year we die. And then we're just turned into dust. And I hate to break it to everybody, but we're all going to die. And that gives me a lot of life because we might as well have fun while we're here.
I read the other day, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, angry or happy. When you get put in the ground, we all get eaten by the same worms.
Sounds wonderful.
It's just like, I read this.
It's a great truth. We die, we're born with nothing. We die with nothing.
Right.
And we all get to, have this experience. And that is the goal, right? Whether it's, and the true goal, they say, is being able to give. So now I'm selfishly trying to build a life where I serve art. That's my message. I know it clear. I just haven't had the courage to shut my mouth and be of service and, go move forward. That's the mission as I do believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience and not a human having a spiritual experience. I feel like we're already kind of there's a soul in here that makes sense to me. And so I can't explain it, but I can kind of explain it, but I don't want to go there. I just feel like, in some take longer to figure out this body, right? And these emotions, and more than anything lately, as I try to name some of these feelings, I try to sit into my body and relax into this feeling wheel of, okay, I'm angry. Okay, I'm excited. Okay, I'm sad. Just that has been really new for me in the last 5 years.
Well, our 40 plus minutes has gone fast. So unfortunately we got to kind of end it with our famous, question is always, do you think you were born or do you think you were made, John?
Well, I'm going to answer it in, I don't have an answer, but I kind of have an idea that some days I feel like everything I have done is scripted through some kind of platform that was created by the cosmos before I ever entered this body. And some days I'm feeling very spontaneous, and I feel like we're building this thing one brick at a time, one day at a time, building relationships. And we're on just this journey. And whoever we meet, we can either say hi and, say goodbye. But so my answer is both. I feel like we are born with opportunities. We are born with certain skill sets physically, and we are born with opportunities. And the second part of it would be, how do you make them come true? How do you paint the image of this beautiful life in your head? How do you execute it? How do you take it into action? How do you embody it? Which would be making it. How do you embody your beliefs? How do you integrate your belief system that you now know? That's the hard part. You get the message from spirit or somebody else, and then you got to go do the work. You got to integrate it. That's the integrity. So if you're talking a big game and you're not integrating it, you have shit for integrity, right? So like, how do you integrate your gifts? So I still leave it as I kind of leave it as a question to you. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I'm a combo guy. I think you're born with enabled, skill sets. Me as being a sales guy and just incredibly disciplined, but my life's journey has made me who I am. And I think it just, there's no wrong answer. You and I are more aligned in that area. I think because life does make you into who you ultimately become, but you have to have the base of being born that gets you to the made part. So, like today, you're making me just by the one thing you said, right? I wasn't born with what you said, but what you said I was born with. You may have just helped me process it better going forward. So yeah, I think to me, it's both. I'm with you. But I've had very strong opinions on born. I've had very strong opinions on made. It just depends on, I guess, that person's journey.
Yeah. And I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy picking at the things that activate my system, and I don't know what it is right now. You got something, right? That activated you.
Absolutely.
That's your nervous system telling you, or your higher power, or your body, whatever you want to call it. It's like saying, hey, we got that to work on. Okay. I love that. I don't have it right now in this conversation because I hog the whole conversation and I talk, but something will hit me from this, whether I listen to it later or I'll be driving, something will hit my system that says, okay, that's what we're working on. That's it. Then I take that, I grapple with it, and I try to, wring it out once or twice and see how it goes into my system. And then that's the next, chop wood, carry water, right? Repeat.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it. I really actually enjoyed speaking to you today. It was really enjoyable.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you. You got a great smile and a great team and a great podcast. I am so grateful that you chose me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.